What has happened in Lahaina on the island of Maui since the fire that took place August 8th, 2023? Today, in this video, you're going to get an inside perspective from Don Harris. Don is a resident of Lahaina, and he is also a top real estate agent with Keller Williams Realty Maui. Let's get started. I'm Jeremy Williams, owner of Red Hawk Coaching and host of the Survive Scale Soar podcast. And welcome back to the Survive Scale Soar podcast channel right here on YouTube, where we make videos for small businesses just like you with a passion to soar, both in life and in business. Let's jump into my interview with Don Harris. He is a resident of Lahaina on the island of Maui. He is also a top real estate agent with Keller Williams Realty Maui. And I'd like to welcome our guest, Don Harris. He is a realtor with Keller Williams Realty Maui. And he's going to be joining us today on the show talking about the devastating fire that hit Lahaina a few months ago. And man, it's sad because it was such a tragic event and you just don't hear about it anymore. So I'm glad to have Don coming onto the show talking about, what happened at that time and also, still the recovery efforts that are happening now. I think it's really important to keep conversations like these at the top of people's minds. So Don, welcome to the show.
Aloha.
Aloha. I love
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
I even go ahead, Don.
I was gonna say I traded my howdy for an aloha.
Fellow Aggie. I wore it today. I typically dress up for these, but I was like, I'm going to wear my Dole Plantation t-shirt that my wife brought back to me from Hawaii. I wanted to be in theme with our conversation today. So Don, tell us about life on Maui before the fire.
It's pretty awesome. We have people all the time ask, what's the difference between winter and summer? Do I need to bring warm clothes for winter? And kind of the temperature in Lahaina specifically. In the summer, it's low 70s to high 80s, maybe low 90s. And in the summer, it's high 60s to mid 80s. So it's pretty much always the same temperature. One of the reasons I moved there was so I can wear shorts and an aloha shirt and flip-flops. We call them slippers in Hawaii. But that's my normal everyday dress for my real estate business.
That's got to be amazing. That was one of the things my wife brought back. She's like, the temperature never really changed.
No,
She said it
it's the
was
same all the time.
absolutely beautiful. Do y'all get a lot of rain there?
In Lahaina, we don't, but to give you an example of how much the weather changes on the island, Lahaina gets about 11 to 12 inches of rain a year. Going about 5 miles north to Ganapali, it gets about 24 inches of rain a year. And go another 5 miles to Kapalua, and it gets about 45 to 50 inches of rain a year. So depending where you are on the island, it could just be a few miles apart. There's a huge change in weather.
Yeah, so it almost kind of it sounds almost. I know Vegas gets a little less rain than that, but it kind of sounds like that where almost every day is a sunny day.
It is. And specifically, that's one of the reasons that I chose to live in Lahaina, because I can go outside and it's almost always guaranteed that it's sunny and not raining and beautiful. And literally, that's pretty much how it is every single day.
So Don, I know people are going to be very interested in the conversation we're about to have, and that's with the fire that took place in
Mhm.
Lahaina, and absolutely devastating, burning everything on the ground and even underground. I heard even like some of the sewer systems in the
Mhm.
area were impacted because of the tremendous amount of heat.
Right.
Uh, Tell me about what happened. So I know you weren't actually there during the fire. Tell us a little bit about that.
Correct. So my daughter got married August 5th. So I was actually in Texas at the time. I had already planned to stay till the following Sunday. And then, of course, the fire happened on the 8th on a Tuesday. Um, so I was watching it from here, on social media. and tried to text all my friends and find out what was going on. Little did I know, all the phone lines were out. There was no texting possible. So the people in Lahaina and West Maui were completely closed out. There were people just a few miles away from Lahaina that had no idea that the whole town had burned down. So over the next couple of days, I'm constantly on social media trying to get any information because I don't know if my place survived, because we were getting reports, this whole neighborhood's gone, that whole neighborhood's gone. And then the next day, of course, there were some flyby videos and you could see the devastation, but they didn't fly close enough to my area for me to tell if mine had survived. So about 2 days later, there was actually, wasn't quite a satellite view, but it was a pretty high airplane view. And I was able to stop it, on YouTube. And I could kind of see that it looked like most of the buildings in my neighborhood were standing, but you still didn't know, because you could only see a rooftop view. So you didn't know what the sides looked like or anything.
How did that feel like when you're sitting there and you have no communication with the people that you love, your friends and everybody that's there on the island? What was that feeling or emotion that you had while you're waiting?
Well, especially when you see what was destroyed and knowing the type of population that was there, because especially, so if someone's watching this and they're familiar with Lahaina, Front Street is the business district, and it's probably the biggest visitor draw on the island. So that's where everybody goes, tons of restaurants, shopping, all kinds of stuff. A block off of that, and then up the mountain, which is called Mauka, towards the mountain, is all housing. And there are a very few vacation rentals in Lahaina. The majority is just where people live. And a lot of those are multi-generational families. So, grandma, grandpa bought it in the 40s or 50s. It was paid off years ago. And now there is their kids and maybe grandkids living in the house. And they've added on, done all this stuff. And so all these were wood houses, and much of them, I'm afraid, are going to have been uninsured. So it's going to be super devastating. But with all that in mind, I had tons of friends that lived in the area, can't get a hold of them. So I don't know who survived, because the fire really went from the top down to Lahaina in about 30 minutes. We had 70, 80-mile-hour winds, and it covered, I think they said it's about 5 square miles of area that was gone. Matter of fact, of the 4 places that I've lived since I moved to Maui, 2 of them burnt down. So it's kind of crazy. I think 2 of the places that I lived are gone. I have multiple clients that lost their properties, multiple friends that lost their properties. I did lose some friends. There were some people that I know that passed away. I have friends that, if you heard the stories, had to run and jump in the ocean to escape the flames. And they were in the water for 5 hours. And they said the wind was blowing so strong that embers were literally hitting them sideways. And they're out 50, 100 yards in the water. I have friends that literally ran through the streets to Kanapali to get away. And they said the flames were shooting straight across the street. It wasn't like a fire where the house is burning, the fire's going up. The flames are going across the street. So they said it was almost like Frogger. You see this flame going, you have to wait, and then it kind of ease up for a second, and then have to run. So totally, totally terrible, devastating. And on top of that, so many cars were getting stopped. The smoke was so blacked out that people couldn't get around cars. So it backed up, and it just terrible, terrible situation. So, all that happens. And over the next couple of days, I'm trying to figure out if my place survived. And then one of my friends was able to finally get a hold of me, and I guided him into my condo. I gave him the codes and everything. And he said everything appeared to be fine. I did have some ash in the condo, but I was super lucky that mine survived. So Saturday, I got to Maui on Friday, but I couldn't get to Lahaina on Friday because all the roads were still blocked. So I was able to get there Saturday and saw that basically I was safe. Everything was okay. However,
no food, no water, no electricity.
Right. There's just no power, no water. I did stay there one night because we'd heard all these stories about looting and all that stuff. So I was wanted to protect the little that I had there. Um, and within a day or two, National Guard came in and cordoned off the whole area. And so with the toxicity of the air and no water, no power, I was kind of forced to leave. I mean, they didn't make me leave, but basically you can't live there. So until late October, I actually lived in 11 different places, which was not fun. I don't know if you've ever had to constantly move for 3 months, but it's not enjoyable. Uh, and, I tried to not use the FEMA resources because I was a single guy and, I had insurance and I had made sure that I was okay. So I tried not to use any FEMA or Red Cross resources because I knew there were so many families that needed it. And that's why I stayed in so many different places. I had so many friends that were just wonderful and allowed me to stay in their places and offered, whatever I needed. Um, and, I guess that's kind of the short story of how it went until I moved out. But the area is still devastated. There are still thousands of people that don't have a permanent place to live yet.
So when I want to go back and this is you're in the real estate industry, so I want to kind of go back and talk about a couple of things that you mentioned. You said a lot of the homes in and around Front Street were wooden construction,
Yes.
highly combustible. And wasn't the construction on your condo unit a lot different?
Yeah. So it was completed in 2019 and 20. My particular unit was finished in 2020, but it had hardy plank siding, cement fiber siding, and new asphalt roofs. And they think that that's a big part of why ours survived, because my patio furniture has burn holes all over it. So there was definitely embers all over the place. There were 4 condo buildings and 1 house in my neighborhood that burned. And I think what happened is the wind blew up the shingles, then embers were getting inside the shingles and then able to burn. Or that maybe there were some open windows and embers went in. Because there's a lot of people in Maui that don't have air conditioning by choice, because, if it doesn't really get that hot and there's always a breeze, it's usually pretty comfortable inside. But in general, the only structures that survived were the newer construction buildings.
And then the economic destruction. You talked about these homes. A lot of them were generational,
Yes.
probably already paid off. Didn't have insurance. And you think of, what the cost to build it today versus back in the 50s and the 40s.
Right.
Talk a little bit about that. Like how I want people to grasp the amount of destruction, not just the lives, but also just the
Yeah.
financial destruction of that. Can you talk a little bit about that?
You bet. Now you got to take into account that Hawaii is a much more expensive place to build than the mainland. Labor is expensive, but shipping and materials is super expensive. And then on top of that, coming from Texas, it's a business friendly state. It seems like everyone is trying to help you in government to, be successful. Hawaii is not that way. Hawaii, it seems more like they put up roadblocks rather than trying to help you. So we have permitting problems on Maui, just normally. And then on top of that, much of Lahaina is in what's called a special management area that has additional permitting requirements. And then there's even another part of Lahaina that's inside that special management area that's a historical area. So it has even more permitting issues. So because of all those permitting issues, it's harder for people to stay up with proper construction types and methods because it can take 6 months to a year just to get a permit approved. So a lot of times people just throw up whatever they want to throw up. They'll just put in a kitchen, put in an extra room, do whatever without getting it permitted. Matter of fact, I saw a statistic earlier that a couple months ago after this happened, that the average cost of red tape, government stuff for a new construction affordable housing unit in Hawaii is about $230,000. So that's on top of the labor and materials. So to give you an idea, it is not unusual for a one-bedroom condo, residential condo, to cost $500 to $600,000. You're talking 400 to 600 square feet. So when you get these houses that are older, they're 1,800 square feet, 2,000 square feet, to rebuild that now would probably be $1.5 million with new construction materials, permitting issues, and everything. And of course, the people that live in them, generally speaking, are working one or two jobs as it is, maybe three jobs. They're multi-generational families, so they don't have the money. So with all these people either not insured or most likely underinsured, because I doubt they kept raising their insurance protection as the years went by, it will be hundreds of millions or billions, depending on who takes over that cost. If the government takes that cost on, it's going to be a huge problem for the taxpayers. And they try to pass that on to visitors. So that makes it more expensive to visit Maui, which decreases the visitors. So now we have less taxable dollars coming in. So it's a vicious circle. But I've heard $2 billion as the cost to rebuild just Lahaina. And that doesn't take into account all the thousands of jobs that were lost in Lahaina. And it also doesn't take into account, because the government and people, and especially people that didn't live on Maui, were telling everyone not to come to Maui, the entire Maui economy took a nosedive. So we've lost hundreds of millions of dollars of tax revenue island-wide, and we've lost so many jobs that people have started leaving the island. I know multiple people that didn't lose their property in the fires, but the loss of the economy and the big hit the economy took caused them to have to leave. So it's been terrible all around. It really has.
So, you hear these things, there's tons of conspiracies and all these things, but there's some reality, I think, to the situation. Do these families not have the money to come back to rebuild? And do you see resorts coming in to take on some of that land because they have the deeper pockets? Like what happens? How does it look different in the next 5 to 10 years?
So I do think that the Front Street business area will be rebuilt fairly quickly being 2 to 3 years. The residential areas, I think, are going to take a long time. They still haven't even started cleaning the debris yet. I've read that they're supposed to start cleaning it next month, but that's going to take a year or two. One of the challenges on Maui and in Hawaii is a lot of people, even though they vote for the government, they don't trust the government. So one of the things that they have to do is they have to sign a document, a right of entry document, that allows the Army Corps of Engineers to come in to clean the properties. Well, there's all this misinformation. You talk about conspiracy theories, all this misinformation that a lot of the locals think if you sign that document, they're going to take your land. You're signing your land over, and that's not what's happening. They just have to have the right to come in to remove the debris. So there's going to be a lot of lots that don't get cleaned at all. Well, if they are paid off, it's not that bad, right? They're not spending money monthly, but if they're not paid off, they're spending mortgage money, monthly on that. So that's a huge expense. But what I think is going to happen in the long term is there are going to be a lot of properties where the people, like we're talking about, can't afford to rebuild it. So they're going to, in essence, be forced to sell it. Now, granted, a lot of these lots are up the side of the mountain and have unbelievable ocean views. And if you've been to Maui in the winter, you can be on the land up the mountain and see whales jumping all over the place. So it's going to be spectacular views. So they could still probably sell their lots for $500,000 to $1 million. And I think that's what will end up happening to a lot of people is they'll do that. And they're going to move somewhere in the mainland where they can buy a house for $300,000 and have $700,000 left over to retire or live life on the mainland much cheaper. But it will change the demographics, I think. I don't think the way Lahaina is situated, it's not really an area where resorts could come in because it's just too much of a residential area. And the government, I just can't imagine, is going to allow it. There's already an outcry of too much vacation property on Maui. So I do think that there'll be wealthier individuals that can come in and will buy properties, buy lots and build. So in 20 years, Lahaina will look great. It'll be up to date construction, everything will look pretty, but it will be a lot different demographically, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I think that just goes back to kind of example of the devastation that took place, right? That you
Yeah,
tell me, hey, it's in 20 years, it's gonna be great.
yeah,
And that's quite a long time.
it is. It is. And I do think there'll be a lot of housing built in the next 5 years, but there's going to be a lot that's going to just be argued about for a long time. And they'll you'll probably still be able to pick up individual lots in 10 years that have not been rebuilt. So that's why I say 20 years. 20 years is probably what it'll take to have everything rebuilt.
Don, I've got people that are listening. Most of these are small business owners that are listening on this podcast episode today. Let's put one of the conspiracy theories to rest. And I think you probably have better intel on this than anybody. You were there. Was this fire created by blue lasers?
No. Yeah, for anyone that really knows West Maui specifically, and really all of Maui, the winter is wet, the summer is dry. We have fires every year. Matter of fact, on my Facebook memories, I have photos and video of fires every year that I've lived here. Matter of fact, last year, 2022, there's a Lahaina Luna L up on one of the mountains above Lahaina. That whole mountaintop burned last year, like in October, November. So we were just fortunate at that time the wind wasn't pushing the fire down. Otherwise, that would have probably hit more houses because it would have hit some of the ones further up the mountain that this fire didn't. So unfortunately, it's a common occurrence here. And some of it's caused by power lines that fall. Um, and, people say, well, why don't you bury all your power lines? Well, if you live on a volcano, there's really hard rock all around. And I have friends that have built houses, and just to dig a pool or the foundation area or just even a utility trench can cost tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars, because they might have to blast rock or pull up huge boulders that take massive equipment to get out of the ground. So to build thousands of miles of underground cabling, who's going to pay for that? Ultimately it gets passed on to the consumer. And I don't know what the current Texas electric rates are, but when I left, it was like 8 cents per kilowatt. On Maui, it's typically 35 to 45 cents per kilowatt. So it's already devastatingly expensive to use electricity. If you added all those other costs that make it safer on Maui, for sure, I don't know who could afford the electricity.
It'd be unaffordable.
Yeah,
And like you said, it get passed down. It gets passed down to the residents, and it gets passed down to
yeah,
the visitors,
yeah,
and then you get into that, like you were describing earlier, that vicious cycle.
yeah.
So are you back in your home in Lahaina or not?
Yeah, so at the end of October, I was able to get ServPro, which is a remediation company, come in, and they cleaned my condo, cleaned my attic, took all the insulation out. And then I brought in air purifiers and an air quality monitor that I can actually monitor from my phone here from Texas. And so my air is actually probably cleaner than anyone's air here in Texas. Matter of fact, there are actually air monitor stations outside all over the place, and I can pull them up. And almost every time, Lahaina air has less volatile chemicals than air here in the woodlands. So it's safe. I wouldn't go playing in the debris or anything, but it's relatively safe now. Our water is still not technically approved to drink. That should be coming in the next month. However, multiple people in our neighborhood have had their water tested repeatedly, and it's always come back as drinkable. So I'm not concerned about it. I will wait for the county to give us the official approval. But other than that, I can live in my condo. Now, earlier I talked about National Guard. I still have to go through a National Guard checkpoint to get to my condo. And all the areas that are burnt still have fencing put up, and there's this black tarp that they put, which is another conspiracy theory. Um, there's black tarp that's put up on the fences, and the purpose of it is to minimize dust spreading or debris spreading because it is windy on Maui. Of course, the conspiracy theory was they're putting up all that black tarp so that the government can come in and do all kinds of evil, nefarious things, while people can't see it. But that's just not true, along with the blue lasers.
Yeah. So it does make it probably a little inconvenient to get in and out. How long do they think that type of setup with the National Guard on site? How long is that going to be in place, do you think?
They haven't said, but my guess is they'll be there at least as long as it takes for them to clean the debris. And I mean, the fencing goes around the entire perimeter of the burn area. So it's, 5 square miles. So what is that? 20 miles of fencing ish. Well, I guess we don't have the seashore side fenced, but I think it'll probably be there for 2 years, most likely. Now they may move the National Guard entrance beyond our neighborhood at some point, but right now, where it's located, there's not much more you could move it without opening up some of the debris area for people to go see. And I do a lot of social media. When we get to the real estate part, we can talk about that, but I've intentionally not videoed or shown a lot of pictures of the devastation because it's everywhere. You can find it everywhere. And out of respect for my friends that lost their lives or their properties, it's just not something that I want to promote is more of the devastation.
Yeah, and I think that's to be respected. And
Yeah.
I know you've shared that on some of your posts, and sometimes I would see in the comments and people just didn't get it. But I think it's different when you're looking at it through social media and you've actually experienced
Yeah.
it. Like it's not a story to you. It's
Right.
like it's your life.
Well,
Yeah.
literally coming out of my condo across the parking lot from me, one of the buildings that burned is down. So it's like 40 feet from my front door. So it's visible. I mean, it's right there. And I have friends that live there, right? And none of them were hurt. They all escaped. But the 4 buildings that burned are right next to my building. So I don't go a day without seeing the devastation, even if I don't leave my condo. It's just right there in front of you. So it's something to be treated with the right respect. And I don't like that there are so many people that are doing it for clicks.
And I think too, and I know you probably feel this way, is there, it's almost like survivor's guilt.
Mhm.
Going back and your walls are standing, you're
Yeah,
able to get back in and yet feet away,
yeah,
people on a personal level that they lost everything they had, and some of them even lost their
right.
life. And
Yeah,
to to not even be there, you were in Houston. We talked about that before we jumped on, that you
yeah.
would have been there.
Oh yeah, for sure.
And that's very personable, and I respect and I appreciate Don for taking that stand, because a lot of people do things for clicks today. We all know
Yeah,
that.
yeah,
And I think to be able to say, hey, I'm gonna reserve that for just my own personal being. I think that's very respectable.
yeah.
Um, so we're talking about a 20-year plan for Lahaina to come back on, and that day we do say it's a long time, yet it's amazing how years pass.
Hmm.
I've known you for some time now, and I look back and I was like, I met Don, I think in 2012,
Hmm.
and that seems like yesterday, and it's not.
Right.
It
Yeah,
just blows by so fast.
yeah.
So there is hope in that, knowing that Lahaina is going to come back.
Hmm.
Take your money and spend it on Maui. The economy
Yes,
needs it.
yes.
And I think the other thing too is to always not forget. It's amazing what the media can do. Is it stirs up, and it focuses intensely on something, and then it goes away.
Right.
And tell me about that before we jump into your real estate business. How can people help if they want to somehow help?
Honestly, and there is a big split on this, what I'm going to talk about on Maui. There are those that say, stay away, don't come back. And there are those that are saying, come back, we need you. I'm in the come back, we need you side of this. Lahaina is gone. And when you drive to the west side, you have to necessarily drive around it. So you can see that it's gone. And even with the fencing, there are portions that you can see. And it's like a movie set. I mean, it's hard to believe that it was a town. But beyond that, Kaanapali, just 2 miles north of Lahaina, is normal. Kaanapali up to Kapalua, Napili, Kahana, all that's normal. There are people that live there that need you to be there, spending money on your vacation, because even if their job isn't directly tied to that, it's a service job that caters to the services, you know. So when The Rock specifically and all these people were saying, well, it wasn't The Rock, it was Jason Momoa. Sorry about that, Rock. He was saying, don't come to Maui. And the governor was saying, don't come to Maui. And all these people, the mayor was saying, don't come to Maui. It devastated the West Side specifically because, there are another 15,000, 20,000 people that live on the West Side outside of Lahaina that suddenly lost their jobs completely, and it was a couple months and they weren't getting the COVID relief that people on Maui were getting during COVID. So it was super devastating. So the best thing that you can do, come to Maui. If you can't find a place on the west side to stay on the south side, but come to the west side. Visit. There's still got tons of beaches. There are a lot of places, a lot of condos that are putting up families, which is great. So there's not as much housing as there was, or not as much vacation rentals as there was, but there's still plenty. And think about most of the vacation rentals owned on Maui are owned by someone somewhere else, right? So maybe Jeremy's got a vacation rental on the west side, and I've got plenty of clients that do. Well, they need you to come, right? It's not that they don't want to help locals, but if locals aren't renting their place, they need their place rented too. So go there, support the economy. There are a bunch of charities to give to. I completely stayed out of the vetting the charities aspect because I don't want some charity to do something wrong that I promoted. So you can look up charities and see if there's one that you like, but best thing to do would just be come to Maui.
I love that. It's amazing in times of tragedy when people turn away the people that can help. And I think you're spot on. Like, bring the money where it directly impacts the economy.
Yes.
And so that's great. Thank you for sharing that. Before I speak with Don Harris about his successful real estate business, take a minute to go visit my website, redhawkcoaching.com, to get more content just like this that's going to help you soar both in business and in life. Make sure you sign up for my Power Packed email. It goes out every Friday, and I share with you business strategies that's going to take your business to the next level. You're also going to find information about the coaching services that I offer. They're one-on-one coaching appointments that are customized to your needs. I offer 3-month, 6-month, and annual packages. Book an appointment through my website and learn more about the opportunities I provide that can help you and your business. Again, visit redhawkcoaching.com. I want to jump now into your real estate business. In particular, there's a lot of people that want to move out your direction, get a second house. Don, you've been in the real estate business for 13 years. You were here in the Woodlands, Texas area. That's where we had met.
Right.
Now you're with Keller Williams Realty Maui. It's got to be a beautiful place to work. Tell us about your real estate business.
It's awesome. Part of why I moved to Maui was to get out of the rat race and out of the busyness of Texas and the mainland. So my normal day is in, like I said, shorts and aloha shirt and flip-flops, going and looking at multi-million-dollar properties, and several $100,000 properties all over the island, meeting with people who've always had a dream of moving to Maui or buying a place on Maui. And it's so, not to say that real estate on the mainland wouldn't be as fun, but when someone's buying on Maui, I always say you don't you don't have to buy on Maui, you get to buy on Maui. And you get to buy on Maui because you've been successful somewhere else and you've had a dream. So when I'm helping people on Maui, it's awesome because I'm literally helping dreams. You know, people cry when they buy properties here, and it's awesome to be able to share in that experience. It was that, you know, you as a real estate coach would never tell someone, hey, go move somewhere where you don't know anyone and start a real estate business, right? Because it's all who you know. So it was hard to get started. You know, I moved here, held tons of open houses, went to all the trainings that we had with KW on the island to kind of figure out what people did. But probably the key was social media for me. When we were getting ready to move here, I was married at the time that we moved here. We didn't really tell anyone that we were going to move to Maui because, you know, I had a corporate job in addition to my real estate stuff, and I didn't want anything getting messed up with my corporate job before I was ready to turn in my notice. So we didn't tell anybody. We turned in my 2-day notice. We told everybody and moved to Maui. And then people were emailing me constantly saying, hey, how did you do that? So I was writing these long emails, and you know how long it takes to write an email sometimes. It'd be an hour, 2 hours to write whatever, respond to whatever they had. And I was like, man, this is just killing me. You know, it's taking too much time. And then my ex-wife and I had created a Facebook group between us where before we moved here, we were sharing, you know, properties to consider, or, you know, how do you move your pets? What's the best way to do whatever? So we were sending that stuff back and forth to each other so we could both keep up with it. So I was complaining one day about all these emails, and my ex-wife goes, well, why don't you start a Facebook group? So I started a Facebook group called Move to Maui, and it's still there now, about how to move to Maui. It wasn't to get me real estate business. It's literally, what is Hawaii like? What is Maui like? What do I need to know? How do I ship my car? What do I do about pets? You know, how do I find a place? What are rentals like? What's just anything to do with Maui life? And it just started growing and growing and growing. And now I've got 7,500 people in the group. And I've actually got about 250 people that I haven't vetted yet because I look over everybody's profile before I let them in. Because of the fire, that became not as big a priority. But January, I'll start going back through that. But through that group, people began to get to know me as a human. And, you know, I also have a social media presence with my real estate business on Facebook. So then they'd go over there and start looking at that and figure out that I knew what I was talking about, in addition to knowing that I liked Maui and that I was a good guy. And so I started getting a lot of business from that group. I still really don't promote myself as a realtor in there. I mean, people know I am because I'll share stuff from my real estate page, but it is not a solicitation group. And it's intentionally not a solicitation group. It's an information group. I'm sure you're familiar with Ninja Selling by Larry Kendall. I'm a huge Ninja Selling proponent. So I like the idea of attracting versus pursuing. So all this leads back to what you're asking about life on Maui. Because I've created a system where people come to me, I really don't have to spend time lead genning. So I wake up, I do my little morning exercise, I do the business that I need to do, answer the emails I need to answer, go do the real stuff I need to do, and then respond to the people asking me to help them. So it's been pretty wonderful. And honestly, the last few years, and this is probably going to get a little bit TMI here. At late 2021, my dad had cancer and started getting in bad health. So I actually left Maui in October, at the end of September, and was here until almost May. I went home, went back to Maui for about a month total, 2 different times. I was caring for my dad. He finally passed away in April of 2022. So I stayed about another month and kind of helped my mom get resettled. And then I went back to Maui, and my ex-wife and I decided to get divorced. So then I went through that whole process and was still dealing with, you know, our agreements and whatever to get through the divorce. And then the fire happens. And so I got back in my condo at the end of October, but then I came to Texas at the end of November for Christmas with family. So I've only been home for a month in the last 6 months, and I've really only been, well, I really haven't been real estate focused for the last 2 to 3 years. But because of that attraction and the group and people and networking, referrals, I do over 10 million in volume every year with zero lead gen. So
Yeah. I think
from a real
that's
estate
amazing.
perspective, it's great, you know.
I think that's amazing. Yeah, and I appreciate you sharing that because there's a lot of people out there. Well, people will come to coach with me and they're like, okay, how do I have my social media presence? And
Yeah,
how do I go get more leads and all these different things. And I appreciate you sharing that you're actually utilizing the law of attraction to grow
right.
your business as opposed to all the ways that sometimes we're told or the world
Yes,
tells us we need to do things. You going a little counterculture. I'm a counterculture person. I like to go against the grain. I think that's where all the growth happens, anyways. I really do appreciate you sharing that. And if you're listening to this on the podcast or you're watching it on YouTube, is know that there are other ways.
hmm,
You don't have to go follow all the salmon, upstream. Go the other
right.
way. There's opportunity out there, and
Yeah.
so thank you for sharing that.
Well, if you're genuine, you attract people. And I just send out information and I help people. I can't tell you how many people that rent that I help, and I do not do rentals. I make zero money on rentals, but I've spent so many hours helping somebody figure out how to find a rental, or just answer any question they need to do that has no financial impact on me, because I do believe in that. Put the good out in the universe will bring back good. But
It's that giver's gain, right? So you can
yeah,
give and it's going to return. It might not return right then.
right.
At some point though, it's going to come back around to take care of you.
Well, and you can sleep good at night, because all I'm worried about is helping people. I that's the best thing about my career here on Maui versus in Texas when I was in corporate America, is all I do is help people. And I don't do it expecting anything. It's just fun to get to know that I'm helping somebody to have a better life, you know. So
That's awesome. So I'm here on the mainland and I'm thinking, I'm going to buy a second house or maybe, hell with it. I'm just going to move to Maui.
mhm.
How do people get in touch with you? How can they find you?
So first thing you need to do is join the Move to Maui Facebook group. You can find it's got a little rainbow with a palm tree. You can reach me at donharris@kw.com. Don Harris Maui is my website, KW website. But really, social media is the best place to be. And I'm going to expand into YouTube. That's one of my targets for this year, is to get more YouTube information up. But it's easy to do. You can find me on Facebook, Maui Don Harris Maui. Either one of those will get you right to me.
Great. And if you're watching the video or if you're listening to the podcast, the links will be down in the description. So you'll be able to easily find it and connect with Don. Don, I want to thank you for taking time out. We're in the middle of the Christmas break. We're between Christmas and New Year, for you taking the time to
Yep.
share the story of Lahaina, talking about the island of Maui, how we can help as
Mhm.
well. I appreciate you sharing that with us, and then also sharing with us about your business. And I encourage you. I've known Don for a long time. If you're ever considering going out that direction, you're definitely going to want to work with Don Harris over at Keller Williams Realty Maui.
Yep. Yeah. If nothing else, give me a shout out and I'll tell you where to go spend your money. The activities to do, and places to eat at and all that fun stuff.
Great. So aloha, that means hello and goodbye, correct?
Correct.
So I'm, instead of signing off with onward and upward this time around, I'm going to sign off in the spirit of Maui and Lahaina, saying aloha.
How about this? I'll give you an even better one. Aloha, y'all, and a hui ho. A hui ho means until we meet again. So that ties in my Hawaii, Texas, and see you soon.
Well, I appreciate you again, Don, and thank you for being on the show.
All right. Aloha.
Now that you've heard my interview with Don Harris about the tragedy and also the hope to come in Lahaina and about his successful real estate business, know that there's additional content on the Survive Scale Soar YouTube channel just like this that's going to help you develop both personally and professionally. Click on the video now to watch the next value packed video and feel free to binge. I'm Jeremy Williams, and I'll see you there.